Stuart, good to see you again,
Yeah,
and thank you for coming in and talking on shift.
it's just a good excuse to catch up with you and pick your brain, if nothing else, of course.
Well, you're one of the few people who listens to me anyway, so that's
And I'm not paying you.
that's,
So
that's exactly right. Uh, it's like the old executive coaching joke. I finally go completely mad, and I race into a boardroom and they're screaming, "Nobody's listening to me!" And there's silence in the room until the CEO looks up and said, "I'm sorry, Peter, did you say something?" Anyway,
there you go.
maybe it's only funny to executive coaches. Look, I thought we'd talk today about coaching as the future rather than it unrolls, it arrives with a crash and a bang.
Mm. So AI integrations reshaping the executive class, potentially thinning out the layer of middle management. There are tools now that synthesize data and model scenarios to let leaders cover more ground and have access to things they used to have to wait for. They get it nearly instantly now. I remember you telling me about an executive who had to usually wait 3 weeks for a certain bit of modeling that AI gave him in half an hour. But that also means a bit less with AI replacing what a lot of middle managers used to do. The buffer between the executive and the raw information. So knowing how to read what AI is telling you, being able to critically analyze where it might be wrong, they're now becoming important skills that an executive needs to have, equally, if not superior, to the previous kind of skill set of an executive. And then there's new executive roles like chief AI officer popping up. So that's a whole new class of executive. Boards rushing to implement AI systems, potentially without enough due diligence in some cases. So the question really is, does extensive AI integration make executives more powerful as they start to run leaner teams and capture more value? Or does it make executives less powerful because they're more replaceable now that their judgment can be measured against a model and the judgment really is human judgment? I think that's a lot of what we want to talk about.
I'm not sure whether AI is going to arrive suddenly or whether it's already arrived and we can't do anything. But of course, this morning it was Elon Musk who came out and said that within 5 years there'd be robots wandering around the world and that there would be no need for money because all governments would be handing out social security to people and so there'd be no money. It begs where they're going to get the money from because normally governments get it from us, but
Tax the income that people are making from their jobs.
unless he's going to pay for it all, very nice of him, but I don't think that people will sit around for very long happily not doing anything. I think most people, human beings, want to do something every day.
That's right. Well, just imagine the wave of creative arts that'll come out from all these people who have the time to be creative and work on their hobbies and their crafts and their art now that they don't have to toil for a living, and be an explosion of culture.
One of the things I find fascinating about you is your undeniable and unrelenting optimism. Because to me, that simply means that every street will be covered from top to bottom with statues, people trying to sell their paintings. All gardens will be overgrown, trees will be growing, there'll be flowers everywhere. And whilst that all sounds very good, I'm just not sure. What happens if you can't figure out what you want to do?
Well, I
I suppose you
think
sit amongst the flowers and contemplate the meaning of life, yeah.
we've got time to, if you're not working, got time to contemplate what you should do for as long as you like. And I do think you're kind of coming from the opposite angle there too, from optimism probably. If you someone's offering you a living wage and you're worried about clutter in the streets.
It's just, it is so difficult for someone like me to understand a world without work.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm there as well. I like the theory, but as you say, Money has to come from somewhere.
Well, it's also been used over the centuries to judge success as well,
Mm.
even in the arts. But 200 years, 300 years ago, money didn't judge that. People would be great artists and would be looked after by the surrounding wealthy people. They'd have somewhere to live. They'd have somewhere to work.
But going back to court jester times almost.
Well, that was an interesting role. That's why I love the Robert Bolt play about Henry and Sir Thomas More. They have the common man as a
Mm.
character in it, and of course we're all common men and women. But tonight I thought we would talk a little bit more about where coaching is going to go and how it's going to adapt to this new world. It's interesting that a number of the conversations that I've had recently with executives has disclosed a surprising amount of fatigue or lethargy. They're not worried, or they don't seem to be worried the way I would worry about the end of the world. If, 30, 40-year-old, 50-year-old executives don't seem to be worried that this is going to be an all-consuming change. They don't seem to be worried that it is going to impact the very basis of evolution, because the introduction of AI cuts off many of the important strains of evolution: survival of the fittest, the ability to develop new qualities in order to deal with situations. And that's, from tadpoles to frogs sort of thing. And AI will cut into that, I think. A lot of the executives are hoping they'll be on the top batch and they won't be so affected by it. But there is a lethargy, and I can't understand that lethargy. I can't be the only person who would, with only a little prompting, start to panic about this on behalf of my children.
What are they worried about then, if not AI?
They're either too busy to worry about it, which is ostrich head in the sand type thing, or they just can't deal with it, so they're just ignoring it. The comfort zones some of these people sit in are so resplendent that they're quite happy just to continue to enjoy that.
It's incredibly dangerous, isn't it?
Well, it's done all right in the past. I mean, well, if you look at the GFC, nobody of any real substance went to jail over that, and yet 5 million people lost their homes and their jobs across America,
That's
and
the
it
bit I'm
was
worried about.
fraud.
Mm.
It was parceling up these products that were given AAA ratings by the ratings company, and they were continuously sold, and everybody knew what was inside them, but no one did anything. There are only one or two people who started to put their hand up and say this is wrong, and so we've learnt from that, I think, to watch what happens with AI and see what happens. I think that senior executives, senior people in business should be getting together and saying, well, these are the important questions we need to answer, and we need to answer them now. I don't think we can expect politicians to do that, because politicians live in a world completely unrelated to the street. As much as they protested, they have no real understanding of what it's like to live as we do, or what it's like to live as executives live. They're cut off completely, and so they're not asking the right questions. When was the last time you heard a politician say, well, look, here is an important question that needs to be answered, and everyone's saying, gee, no one's asked that question before? And the reason being is they have to run it through party lines first,
Yeah.
make sure nobody was upset. You don't, the politician, you never ask a question you don't already know the answer to, and most politicians don't know the answer to many questions at all.
Or one that you can't easily divert from.
Yes. Or pretend that you're researching, or you've given it to AI to have a look at it, and we'll let you know as soon as it comes back.
Mm.
So I think the future in relation to coaching hopefully will be coaches standing up and saying, we have been doing this for a long time. We can trace coaching right back to almost to Adam and Eve. There's always someone around who's coaching and forcing the right questions. We should be listened to now rather than become part of the slow, I suppose, acceptance of a force more important, it seems, than us. Coaches should be standing up and saying we're one of the few people, apart from some academics, who spend a lot of time in the trenches with executives and leadership and helping them make decisions, helping them change their behaviours, helping them to understand they don't get to have a bad day, teaching them to allow curiosity to determine their ability to listen to the people that they have responsibility for. So I think coaching has to, and coaches have to stand up and say, look, we've learned all this stuff. You need to start listening to us because we've been there. And if it is simply change that is so bothersome, this is change like no one's ever seen before. It's not change as a definition says, okay, the grass when the sun gets hotter goes from green to brown to nothing. AI says the green grass is no longer there because we don't want it. So it's not change, it's an abrupt reversal. It's an abrupt directional redefinition without any real introduction or input from the people it directly impacts and the executives, of course, who lead them. So I think it is a very, very different. I read today about someone jumping up and down and saying, you know, we've got to understand change. I don't think change is relevant anymore. Change is too slow to deal with AI because AI doesn't understand change. It understands point A and move to point B. And I don't necessarily have to tell you how I did that.
Yeah.
So I had lunch last week with a fellow who I've known for some time, and he went out of his way to. I said, what does AI look like? If it was on a computer screen, what would it look like?
Mm.
And he said the best way of explaining it to you, Peter, is that AI took letters and it turned them into numbers. And it took the numbers, because it could do this, letters can't do it, and created all the variations in the world. And that's how they do it. They do it by the numbers, so to speak. So they take the issues from words and then create them into a plethora of divergent ideas and thoughts by using numbers. That's as far as he could take me. And I thought, that's extraordinary
Yes.
that someone thought about that, and then you give it power and you give it direction. He'd spent some time. I suppose he's too soon out of the organisation, so I won't mention which one it is. But he'd spent time in one of the big organisations that's been dealing with AI and the digital world at an international level, and he's even now even more concerned than he's ever been.
I can't really conceptualize what you just described there in terms of how numbers can, like, numbers as a language achieve
Yeah.
all the results that AI can. I'm obviously not of that kind of mind.
I don't get it either. But what hit my romantic soul was this idea that they realised that combining numbers gave you more variations than combining letters.
I've got some reading to do.
I refuse to read. I can't read any more of it. But yeah, I thought it was quite extraordinary.
Yes.
But I still find that the 0-1 computer language.
Binary code.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even understand that. To be honest with you, I still think what a fax machine does is extraordinary. I remember when I first saw a fax machine working and I thought, holy cow, this is just extraordinary. Just extraordinary.
Throw in how a microchip works. Something made from sand, etc., can hold information. But let's not open any potential conspiracy wormholes about how fast technology's advanced in the last few decades and what could be the cause of that.
Closing conspiracy theories, are we?
No.
Oh, I love conspiracy theories. I think conspiracy theories will, in the historical, if there is history, will explain most of what's happened.
You can't broad brush all of them, can you?
I still think the most extraordinary situation is the 8 or 9 richest people in the world are now in a position that they're so rich, they control so much that it's impossible for them to make a mistake because they own the result. And if you can't make a mistake, then the brakes are off. Mistakes were our natural break in innovation. Our mistakes were our natural break in learning a whole lot of different things. I mean, there are plenty of people who said if you haven't made mistakes, you're not growing.
Yeah.
But if you're now in a situation where you can create something where you own so much of the result that you can't make a mistake, then where are we going? And once again, that takes away the impact of evolution.
Shall we take Elon for an example? It doesn't matter if he makes mistakes, it's no practical effect to him. I think he announced that he wanted to fund a historically accurate film version of the Odyssey. It's a lot of noise around the Christopher Nolan film that's just come out. He wants to make a historically accurate version and have Mel Gibson direct it. So this is a historically accurate version of a story that has gods and nymphs and sirens and a cyclops in it.
It was written as a poem, and to be produced and presented as a poem, and was
Yes.
never intended by its author to be a historical document.
No. It's the story. It's,
Yeah.
anyway. Anyway, I'm sure when it doesn't do well, then just move on and not much will be said about that.
Well, why? Someone's going to start believing it's a historical document. I just worry about someone like that. The sort of uncontrolled money.
What do you think the future of the executive class looks like? Is it going to get lonelier because there's going to be, like we said, potentially less middle management there getting in the way? What do you think the future looks like for the executive cohort?
I think that the executive cohort is going to be required to think with a lot more depth. I think they're going to be required, or I hope they're going to be required, to attach themselves to truth or a series of truths in order to be able to use the work that AI does. And truth, of course, is a difficult subject to define. Truth is a difficult subject to discuss, but it's a very easy subject to recognise. And I think collated with deep work, that's where executives are going to have to spend time. I think understanding the change of values and whether they're needed or not needed is going to be important. I can't imagine a world that simply gives up on the organisations that are producing goods and are basically controlling their lives, not appearing to have a set of values. So, for example, I was talking this morning to a very senior man in the whole data industry, and he was telling me that somewhere in America, I've forgotten where, you can now dial up a car that will come and get you. You get in the back of it, and it will take you to where you want to go.
Driverless, you mean?
Now, my problem with that is that it takes away a whole lot of skills that we'll start losing. The ability to use peripheral vision, which is so important in driving. How the ability to control both feet with a brake and an accelerator, or 2 feet and with a clutch if you're driving an old car. We're going to start losing those sorts of skills. And I think the kaleidoscope of skills we'll start losing will be much more intense in the world of executives who, by their very nature, have spent 30 years based on experiences, teaching themselves how to think and how to produce,
Yeah.
albeit in siloed systems of expertise. So, yes, they will become lonely because there won't be the appetite for a lot of them. I don't think consensus thinking that's been so popular for the last 20 years in organisations will have any place whatsoever going forward, because a lot of that consensus is going to be done by AI. The controlling of AI and where it goes to make decisions will have to fall down to a centre of right. And that will be the CEO and some of the more senior executives. I think more and more boards will lose their impetus and power because they'll just be doubling up. There is no suggestion, and in fact there are arguments quite against it, that many of the boards of directors in Australia are not brighter or more effective or more value-based than the CEOs. They're there because regulation says they should be there. They're there because they should be dealing with the governance issues, but there's no evidence that they're actually doing that. And governance under AI will be completely different anyway. Who knows what that will look like?
Well, exactly. So, what grounds do we have to believe that executives who are currently executives are still the best executives in this new model?
There's a possibility they're not
Yeah,
because they haven't been trained for it.
right. Requiring a different sort of personality almost.
I think that's right, but we don't have the resources, and we haven't had the resources, and we haven't created training programs in order to create the new model CEO. So what we need to do is take a CEO who is used to being effective at that level of an organisation, or an executive, senior in an organisation, used to being effective, understanding the stakeholders, understanding the customers, but they have to learn to think differently. And taking away the process, the weeds that they've been floating around in for so long, taking away that and saying to them, now you're going to have to really start thinking deeply. Now you're going to have to make judgments, and judgments are so much more complex than decisions based on a few facts.
I think this leads neatly, probably, to what this means for you in terms of how you now see yourself coaching moving forward in what is this very fastly evolving situation.
I think coaches are going to have a much more impactful voice. They're going to have to move away from one-on-one coaching to a more general cry to the business world to stop and look and listen and decide how they're going to deal with something that they just thought for a long time was going to make life easier from them. And once you've got them doing that, then you go back to the one-on-one. But it is coaching like we've never seen before. It has to be done quickly, the impact has to be quick, and the subject of the coaching has to really trust the coach to have read the environment and the constraints and the people correctly. So I think the coaching quality will increase once coaches start to broaden what needs to be brought into coaching. No more of the old models, like the grow model and things like that. That it just doesn't exist anymore. It's going to be much more complex, difficult one-on-one, and it's going to take a much more confident sort of coach, one who can hold the attention of a room and really let them see that things are changing very quickly indeed. And if they want to stay on top, they're going to have to grasp new ideas and new thinking patterns. And it's also, they're going to have to say, well, if you can't, then you have to leave the room. Sorry, give the chair back.
The coaching now becomes, and the reason I'm pausing is because I don't want to sound unkind, but ensuring that executives are being more human than potentially they've been required to be in the past. Because, I mean, you've told stories about the fact that sometimes, when people are at that level, are as busy as they are, and also who have that kind of laser focus on career to get where they always wanted to be, that a little bit of sensitivity and perhaps empathy and perhaps objective perspective for others or that sort of thing can fall by the wayside a little bit. So does it become kind of adducing more of that humanity? Because the technical is out the window, it's not necessary.
Yeah, you're right. I'd put it slightly differently and say this. Executives in the future are going to have to deal with complexity in a way they've never really dealt with it. Complexity having issues within it that they've never had to deal with. It's not just, how much money have we got? Do we buy wooden or metal frames? That's not the complexity they're dealing with in the future. It's much more. The other area they're going to have to struggle with is, and we used to say that they're going to have to struggle with ambiguity. They're going to have to make decisions in ambiguity. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to take ambiguity and give it formation. Stop it being ambiguous. We can't just say, well, we're in an ambiguous situation, let's try and sail our way through it. You're going to have to say, well, we've got to stop it being ambiguous and make it real. And I think that's what the leaders of the future are going to have to do. They're going to have to be people who aren't paid, who already have a really comfortable financial position, who are willing to do the job without too many constraints except of the values that they have as the constraints. Because you can't KPI this kind of work. You're going to have to trust a group of people to take society on a trip. At the end of it, we may be able to put society back in some kind of fashion where evolution starts again. But I think these people are going to have to be so natural leaders. They're going to have to invoke and attract trust that has never been. It's almost religious
Are you
in
talking
the
about
trust.
corporate leaders or
Yes,
government?
corporate leaders.
Corporate leaders.
I think the corporates need to take as much as they possibly can away from the politicians.
Well, that's a very kind of wide thing to do. Go from one end of the spectrum of how highly paid executives now to calling
Mm.
for pro bono executives, basically.
Well, there are executives around who have earned enough money to make them comfortable, who don't need, quite literally, don't need to earn any more money.
Mm.
They're just getting a little greedy. And these are the people who have this talent who we need to turn to, because they can't have constraints the way they've had, and promises and aspirations the way they've had them in the past. I mean, I've argued for a long time that prime ministers should be someone who is not paid. They should be doing it because they're just able to do it. Now, I mean, there are so many holes in that argument, I know, but
I wasn't even getting to that yet. If I suppose though you're saying if some people who have at the upper echelons who have earned their money could do this, but the people who are at those upper echelons and have earned that money are of the mindset of earning money, aren't they? So how do
yes,
they suddenly switch them over to the other side?
you put them through a training program
Right.
that says, okay, when enough is enough for you, you announce that and you move into the world of service.
Mm.
The question, when is enough enough? You can ask executives, because they sometimes they just make money out of habit.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're able to say, well, when's enough is enough? I mean, I had plenty of executives saying to me, Peter, look, I really don't need any more money. So what should I do now? And I quite often say, well,
Lots of the podcast.
stop earning it. And they can't quite bring themselves to that decision.
Right.
Oh, okay, I'll give it back. They still don't do very much pro bono work. But there are some people, there are some lawyers, for instance, there are some medical people who graduate and go straight into areas where they believe and they earn very little money. They believe that the particular sort of medicine I'll go and work in that because it's so important, or I believe in a sort of law, I'll go and work in it. It doesn't matter how much money I make. It may be from some of those people that we pluck the leaders,
Yes.
because sometimes they're the cleverest. Sometimes they're the people who are so aware, so curious, and have such an agile intellect and approach that they're the people who can do it. And I think that's where we will get people from,
Yes.
as well as perhaps some of the senior leaders will say, okay, I've got enough, let me do this properly, because the world is the world. The world is important. If you already got financial security and you've got enough for the rest of your life, why wouldn't you say, hold on, this is the world? Why can't I be happily dedicate 5 years to saving it?
I think that's a very common kind of thought for a lot of people who are of a modest background or that sort of thing, who
Yep.
see all these people with these ridiculous amounts of money. We keep talking about Elon. He could end so much world suffering
Yes.
um, pretty almost immediately in some
Yeah.
areas. But it's a mindset thing and a perspective thing. How do you get people whose main focus for a lot of their life has been earning as much as they possibly can? How do you get them to stop having that as a main life focus? It seems like an impossible task. I know you've already answered that by going through courses and so on.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of,
That's where really, really good coaching is going to
yeah,
have to come in. But why not also go to the other end of the spectrum, where people who have never been down that path of earning so much money they're financially secure, they've come out of training, they've come out of university, and they've said, okay, as long as someone looks after me,
yeah.
somehow, let me do it. So, people who go into the priesthood, into monasteries, people who become nuns, these are the sort of people who could probably find a place at the top saving the world.
This sounds like socialism.
No, it's not. Because for socialism, you need a government.
Yes.
So, I mean, how many people do you think are living in monasteries doing extraordinary work, writing extraordinary things, who could run the world?
Well, in this new AI way where we just need a human touch in our leaders.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we start talking about leadership as not an end, but leadership as a quality that occurred when you were born.
Well, I think that's sounds like a nice endpoint for us. Just let's find some people who are not necessarily wealth focused, who are altruism focused, I suppose, and just interested in getting this planet back on track.
Yeah, I think you and I in this discussion shows the value of a discussion, because I think we've both arrived at points we haven't arrived at before. And I think that's I certainly have. So I don't know now from this discussion. the, Maybe coaching is going to be wading into the depths of a 40,000 employee bank to find the people who should be actually leading it.
As with anything, the theory can be sound, but the practical remains to be seen.
I don't think the answer to this is going to be particularly practical.
Mm.
I think, and this has just occurred to me, I think the answer to this is going to have people who are natural leaders and natural servants of leadership rising to the top, and it's almost going to be romantic. It'll have its own odyssey written
Ah,
in poem form in 50 years or 100 years time. It'll be almost poetry in motion to see this occur. The exact opposite of AI.
look, we've reached a point where we're waxing romantically about what could happen when you know we might have started with a bit of dread about the possibilities. But there you go. Thank you
Yes.
very much, Peter.
No, thank you, Stuart. I hope people listen and contribute themselves. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And thank you for being so open in this series about your career.
That's my absolute pleasure. And nothing I like talking about more than me.